So the media is getting disinformation wrong. It's not a literacy or a fake news problem. It's an organized crime problem. We should be following the money and disrupting the industry that is amplifying it. My name is Justin Arenstein. I'm the Chief Strategist at Code for Africa. Information manipulation is a massive problem across Africa. We've seen in the last 4 or 5 years that deliberate attempts to subvert or sabotage public discourse has changed African perceptions towards their traditional allies and partners in big ways. So for example, you'll see across Francophone Africa where there's been a disaffection and almost a divorce of the relationship with Europe and particularly with France. And this has been driven not by falsehoods or by fake information. It's been driven by a very calculated amplification of real grievances and also the surreptitious dropping of information at the right time when it creates the most damage in our societies. It's a subversion of our public discourse that is the real problem here. And it's been done on an industrial scale, both by nation states, but also by an emerging shadow economy or criminal economy that hires themselves out to the highest bidders to subvert our democracies. What's really interesting though is Russia doesn't operate its propaganda or its disinformation campaigns in the same way that we see nation states in the West do. They franchise out their operations, and so they don't run these operations themselves. They rather find local entrepreneurial partners who can speak in an authentic indigenous voice and also can speak and be authoritative on local grievances. And they're seen as kind of ideological partners who are able to firstly build trust with the audiences and also vouch for Russia as an alternative partner to the West. It's being done on a kind of almost cookie cutter playbook model where we see exactly the same approach that was originally applied in Central African Republic or Sudan, then being replicated in country after country, Mali, Libya, Burkina Faso. Exactly the same ingredients, the same priming of an audience, finding the things that give fear to a public, whether it's jihadist violence, whether it's secessionist ethnic kind of insurgents, or whether it's concern about the decay of moral standards, and then amplifying that problem to the point where people start becoming concerned that their traditional democratic institutions can't handle the problem. And then Russia steps in and says, we might be able to have a solution for you. And so increasingly we saw Wagner specifically start shifting away from disinformation, using false information, to rather understanding what the real kind of fission points in a society, the real grievances in a society are, and then amplify that unhappiness, that victimhood that often exists in our societies. And they amplify that which cannot be fact-checked. It's not incorrect. It's often correct. In concerns around the crisis of the cost of living, or concerns about kind of moral standards in a society, and they amplify and weaponize those concerns, and they polarize our societies. The real strategy behind these campaigns is to disrupt trust in our institutions. It's a win-win situation. We start distrusting those in authority and even the media, as well as distrusting democracy itself. And then when you trust no one, you start becoming apathetic. So we tackled this problem and we started looking at mis and disinfo about 12 years ago at Code for Africa. And we launched the first fact-checking initiatives in Africa. As we started doing more and more fact-checking, and we still do a lot of fact-checking, we run the biggest fact-checking operation in Africa. It's Meta's 4th or 5th biggest partner globally. And we started realizing that effectively what we're doing is whack-a-mole. That what we're doing is we're treating the symptom and the small lies. And so very early on, probably about 8 years ago, we realized that we needed to start tracking down the puppet masters. Who is behind all of this falsehood that we see? And by doing that, we started applying network analysis and joining the dots between the false claims. The moment we started doing that, we could see that they were really well coordinated and well organized, and in fact well monetized, that many of the individuals in these networks were being paid or were profiteering off their activities of amplifying falsehood. And that was a light bulb moment. We realized that we could follow the money rather than just following the falsehood. And so we started investigating the economy behind disinformation. And quickly we came to the realization that there is a large, well-resourced, very professional industry here that sees political consultants collaborate with content creators, with social media strategists, and also with publishers who literally build websites purely to be controversial and to upset people so that they'll click on something and then click on another article and another one. So I think that some of the difficult decisions our newsrooms need to make is that we need to be realistic about the actual utility of the approaches we're currently using. Fact-checking is super valuable, but not necessarily as a journalistic output, because who really reads a debunk? And how many minds does a debunk really change? At Code for Africa, where we produce 2,500 to 3,000 fact checks a year, we've begun to learn that the real value of the fact checking we do is to train our algorithms and to train our AI to help us better identify the next wave of falsehoods or of kind of distortions that are coming down the road. And so we see that the platforms are doing this at scale. Media is still focusing on it very much as a journalistic output, which means that we're not really thinking about it as structured data or about the long tail benefits of keeping all of those fact checks in an archive and then networking our archives together. So because we've been working in the mis and disinformation space for over a decade now, we've kind of got over the hype of, the internet is going to steal our souls. And what we've really done is we've stepped back and we've understood that machine intelligence and machine learning is not necessarily all just Gen AI. And so we use a lot of natural language processing to analyze content on a massive scale, on a scale far bigger than the small human team that we do. And what we do is we try and build our technologies as an early warning system and a bit of a funnel, where what it does is it channels things that are outliers or overperformers to human analysts, who are then able to apply human critique and a human research kind of eye to the content to see whether it's something that should be taken further. But we haven't just, the technology's taught us that we can't just rely on technology for the solution. We need to try and figure out different types, how to implement different types of human skills into our newsrooms. And so more than half our hires now are not people with a journalistic background. We're hiring people out of cybercrime forensic units, out of audit team and network investigation teams, from places like KPMG, from due diligence organizations, who are working alongside investigative journalists with organized crime backgrounds rather than fact-checking backgrounds. And that set of unique perspectives suddenly takes us a step further than simply debunking a piece of content to understanding what the intent of that piece of content was, and then try and unravel what the people in cybersecurity call the kill chain behind it. The whole sausage machine that led up to the creation of that piece of false content. And we try and understand how that factory works so that we can also learn when we should be exposing a disinformation campaign to cause maximum pain and maximum cost to the bad guys. Because the reality is that they've got more money than the media. So what we need to do is drive up the cost for these guys to the point where disinformation is no longer this cheap game that they can play to disrupt our economies.